I'm your father. You can do better than that.
Look, do something. Show Daddy you're from Ork.
What's this, Daddy? A little cosmic stick.
Sitcoms are supposed to be our escape, a perfect 30-minute world where every problem is solved with a hug and a punchline. But for the actors creating this fantasy, life was often a nightmare. We're pulling back the curtain on the devastating truths they faced, including one young star who passed away after battling a rare disease right at the peak of her fame. 1. Red Fox.
Me and you and the sound of the ocean behind us.
It's very nice. I love that rumbling sound.
What rumbling sound?
Let's start with a man whose name is synonymous with comedy. Red Fox was the hilarious, grumpy, and lovable Fred G. Sanford on the classic 1970s show Sanford and Son. His most famous bit was faking a heart attack. He would clutch his chest, look up to the sky, and yell, "It's the big one, Elizabeth! I'm coming to join ya." It was a line that made millions of people roar with laughter every time he did it. He was a comedy legend, a pioneer who broke down barriers for black entertainers. After Sanford and Son, he continued to work, and in 1991, he landed a role on a new sitcom called The Royal Family. During rehearsals for the show, the cast was having a great time, joking around between scenes. Suddenly, Red Fox fell to the floor, grabbing a nearby chair as he went down. The cast and crew started laughing. They thought he was just doing his classic routine, being the brilliant comedian he was. But the laughter quickly faded when they realized he wasn't getting up. He wasn't joking. This time, it really was the big one. Red Fox had suffered a massive fatal heart attack right there on the set. His most iconic joke had become a devastating reality, a truly unbelievable end for a comedy giant. It's a chilling thought that a star's final moments could be mistaken for their most famous act. But sometimes a collapse on set is no joke from the start, and a tragic mistake can make a terrible situation even worse. 2. John Ritter.
Awful.
What?
My being in bed with you and you being
Tinkerbell?
John Ritter was pure comedic genius. He was a master of physical comedy, and he became a superstar playing the clumsy but charming Jack Tripper on the massive hit sitcom Three's Company. For years, he was one of the most famous and beloved faces on television. After that show ended, he continued to have a successful career in movies and TV. In the early 2000s, he found sitcom gold again with the show 8 Simple Rules for Dating My Teenage Daughter. He played the loving, funny, and often overwhelmed father to 3 kids. The show was a huge hit, and it felt like John Ritter was back on top of the world. Then, on September 11th, 2003, during a rehearsal for the show, John suddenly fell ill. He felt faint and nauseous and was experiencing severe chest pain. He was rushed to the hospital. The doctors on duty believed he was having a heart attack, a common assumption for those symptoms. They began treating him for that. But they were wrong. John Ritter had a much rarer and more serious condition called an aortic dissection, which is a tear in the main artery of the heart. The treatment for a heart attack actually made his condition worse. Just a few hours later, at the young age of 54, the legendary comedian passed away. It was a stunning and heartbreaking loss that came from a tragic medical misstep. The loss of a main star during a show's run is a terrible blow. But another hit sitcom from the same era also lost a key cast member to a heart condition, leaving a huge hole in one of TV's most famous ensembles. 3. Nicholas Colasanto.
You're probably right, Larry, because I always thought he gave me the name because I never flew first class.
If you've ever seen the show Cheers, you know Coach Ernie Pantuso. He was the sweet, forgetful, and utterly lovable bartender who was a father figure to everyone at the bar. He was played by the wonderful actor Nicholas Colasanto, who everyone just called Nicky. Coach was the heart of the show for its first 3 seasons. He had some of the funniest lines, often because he had no idea what was going on, and his warm personality made him a fan favorite. Behind the scenes, Nicky was just as beloved by his castmates as Coach was by the characters. However, during his time on the show, Nicky was dealing with a serious heart condition. It was something he had been living with for years. By the third season of Cheers, his health had gotten worse, and he was having trouble keeping up with the demanding schedule of a weekly sitcom. His appearances on the show became less frequent as he tried to take care of himself. Sadly, in 1985, during the middle of the show's third season, Nicholas Colasanto passed away from a heart attack at his home. He was only 61 years old. The writers of Cheers decided that the character of Coach would also pass away off-screen, and they wrote a touching tribute episode to honor their friend. The Cheers family suffered another heartbreaking loss years later when one of its biggest stars faced a private battle she kept hidden from the world. 4. Kirstie Alley.
Do you really think you're going to get something for nothing? Do you know how long it takes me to earn $500? Give me 3 squares.
After the passing of Nicholas Colasanto, Cheers needed a new character to shake things up. In came Kirstie Alley as Rebecca Howe, the smart, ambitious, and often neurotic new manager of the bar. Kirstie was a force of nature. She had incredible comedic timing and a fiery energy that was the perfect match for Ted Danson's character, Sam Malone. She became a massive star, winning awards and the hearts of millions of viewers. After Cheers, she starred in hit movies like Look Who's Talking and had another successful sitcom called Veronica's Closet. She was a Hollywood fixture for decades, known for her bold personality and her memorable roles. In late 2022, the world was stunned by the sudden news of her passing at the age of 71. Very few people outside of her immediate family knew that she was sick. It was revealed that she had been in a private, courageous battle with colon cancer. The disease was only discovered a short time before she passed, and it had progressed very quickly. The announcement was a complete shock to her fans and former co-stars, who remembered her as being so full of life and energy. It was a sad reminder that even the biggest and brightest stars face private struggles that we know nothing about. A quiet end for a woman known for her wonderfully loud and vibrant personality. Fighting a health battle in private is a choice many stars make. Our next star also fought a long, quiet war against the same disease, all while continuing to work in the industry she loved. 5. Markie Post.
Worth every penny.
You won't tell them, will you?
Ma'am, where would I begin?
Markie Post was a familiar and welcome face on television for decades. Many people remember her as the kind-hearted and incredibly patient public defender Christine Sullivan on the hilarious sitcom Night Court. She joined the show in its third season and quickly became a fan favorite. Her character was the moral center of a courtroom full of lovable weirdos, and her sweet but flustered reactions to all the chaos were a huge part of the show's charm. She had amazing chemistry with the whole cast, especially Harry Anderson, who played Judge Harry Stone. After Night Court, she continued to work steadily, appearing in many TV shows and movies. In 2017, Markie was given a devastating diagnosis. She had cancer. But she was a fighter. She was determined to not let the disease stop her from doing what she loved. For the next 4 years, she continued to act, taking on new roles, all while undergoing difficult and draining treatments. She kept her battle very private, choosing to focus on her work and her family instead of her illness. She was a true professional and a strong person. Sadly, in 2021, after a long and courageous fight, Markie Post passed away at the age of 70. She left behind a legacy of wonderful performances and an inspiring example of grace and strength in the face of incredible hardship. Some stars are able to fight for years, but for others, the battle is shockingly short, as was the case for a young actor from a 90s classic who went from a diagnosis to his final day in just a few weeks. 6. Dustin Diamond.
That's the most boring prank I've ever heard of. You're pulling her legs, right, Mike?
No, but when I do, you'll be 6 inches taller.
For a generation of kids who grew up in the 1990s, Saved by the Bell was everything. And at the heart of the Bayside High Gang was the lovable nerd, Samuel Screech Powers, played by Dustin Diamond. He was the goofy, awkward, and brilliant sidekick who was always there for his friends. Dustin spent over a decade playing Screech from the show's early days on the Disney Channel all the way through its various spin-offs. He was a huge part of a cultural phenomenon. But after the show ended, life became very difficult for Dustin. He struggled to find work as an actor and was often in the headlines for his controversial personal life and legal troubles. He tried many things to stay in the public eye, from reality shows to a tell-all book, but he could never escape the shadow of the character he played as a kid. In early 2021, he was hospitalized, and doctors delivered some terrible news. He had an aggressive and advanced form of cancer. The disease was already in its final stage when they found it. Just 3 weeks after his diagnosis, the world learned that Dustin Diamond had passed away at the young age of 44. It was a tragic and incredibly swift end for an actor who, despite his later struggles, had brought laughter to millions as one of television's most iconic nerds. The struggles of a child star are a common and heartbreaking story. Our next actor also rose to fame as a cute kid on a hit sitcom, only to face a lifetime of personal battles. 7. Adam Rich.
Excuse me, but aren't you Merle the Pearl?
Well, some folks like to call me that.
Well, I call you that.
In the late 1970s, 8 is Enough was one of the most popular shows on TV. It was a heartfelt dramedy about a family with 8 children, and the breakout star was the youngest of the bunch, Nicholas Bradford, played by a young boy named Adam Rich. With his signature bowl haircut and his charming smile, Adam became America's little brother. He was a massive child star, a face that was on lunchboxes and magazine covers everywhere. He was adorable, and the audience loved him. But as is so often the case with child actors, growing up in the spotlight was incredibly difficult. When the show ended, Adam found it hard to transition into adult roles. He began a long and public struggle with substance abuse and had numerous run-ins with the law over the years. He spoke openly about his battles with his personal demons and his mental health, trying to get his life back on track. He largely stepped away from the entertainment industry, preferring a private life away from the pressures of Hollywood. In early 2023, Adam Rich passed away at his home at the age of 54. It was later reported that his passing was the result of an accidental overdose of a powerful substance, a final tragic chapter in a life that was forever shaped by the pressures of childhood fame. A long public struggle with dependency is a heartbreaking story we've seen too many times. But perhaps no sitcom star's battle was more public or more tragic than that of a man the world knew as a friend. 8. Matthew Perry.
Waiting for like forever to go out with Lorraine. Just calm down.
Calm down, calm down. You set me up with a woman I've dumped twice in the last 5 months.
For 10 years, Matthew Perry was Chandler Bing on Friends, one of the most successful and beloved sitcoms of all time. With his sharp, sarcastic wit and his perfect comedic timing, he created a character that was iconic. He was the funny one, the one with all the best one-liners. The show made him a global superstar, a household name recognized all over the world. He seemed to have it all: fame, fortune, and a job that made millions of people happy. But behind the laughter, Matthew Perry was fighting a desperate, decades-long battle for his life. He was very open about his struggles with addiction to alcohol and powerful pain medication. In his memoir, he detailed the terrifying extent of his dependency, revealing that he had been to rehab dozens of times and had multiple near-death experiences. He spent years trying to get better, and he used his own painful experiences to help others who were struggling. It seemed like he had finally found some peace and stability. But in late 2023, the world was shocked by the news that Matthew Perry had been found unresponsive in his home. He was only 54 years old. His passing was later ruled an accident caused by the effects of a strong substance. It was a devastating end to a man who gave the world so much laughter while he was in so much pain. The world knew about Matthew Perry's struggles, but some actors keep their battles hidden, fighting their demons in secret until it's too late, which was the case for a rising star on a popular 90s sitcom. 9. David Strickland.
Wow, I am so proud of you. Oh, finally, you got some professional help to work on your intimacy problems.
In the late 90s, the sitcom Suddenly Susan was a big hit, thanks in large part to its star, Brooke Shields. The show was about a magazine writer and her quirky co-workers. One of those funny co-workers was the rock music reporter Todd Stites, played by David Strickland. David was a talented and funny actor who was quickly making a name for himself in Hollywood. He had a great energy on screen and was becoming a fan favorite on the show. He seemed to be on the verge of a big career. But in private, David was struggling deeply. He had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and was also fighting a dependency on harmful substances. He had been in and out of trouble with the law and was trying to manage his mental health, but it was a difficult battle. In March of 1999, while on a trip to Las Vegas with a friend, David Strickland made a tragic choice. He was found in a motel room having taken his own life. He was only 29 years old. The cast and crew of Suddenly Susan were completely devastated. They had to film a very special and emotional episode where they said goodbye to his character and to their friend. It was a shocking and deeply sad end for a young actor with so much promise. Losing a young star to their inner demons is a profound tragedy. But what happens when one of the most brilliant comedic minds of all time is fighting a secret battle, not just with his mind, but with his own brain? 10. Robin Williams.
Is this black liquid?
This is coffee.
What do you do with it?
We have it with our breakfast.
Oh, allow me.
Robin Williams was a comedic supernova. He first burst into our homes as the hilarious alien on Mork and Mindy. His energy was electric, his mind was faster than anyone's, and his ability to improvise was legendary. He was a once-in-a-generation talent. After his sitcom success, he became one of the biggest movie stars in the world, famous for both his comedy in films like Mrs. Doubtfire and his incredible dramatic acting in movies like Good Will Hunting, for which he won an Oscar. He was a beacon of joy and laughter for the entire world. That's why the world went into a state of shock and disbelief in August of 2014 when the news broke that Robin Williams had passed away at his home. He had ended his own profound suffering at the age of 63. For years, he had battled with depression, but it was later revealed that there was something more going on. An examination after his passing showed that he had been suffering from a severe and undiagnosed case of Lewy body dementia. It's a cruel and aggressive brain disease that causes confusion, anxiety, and a decline in mental abilities. The man who brought so much happiness to the world was privately living in a state of fear and confusion. It was a tragic end to a brilliant life. The loss of a beloved star by their own hand is unimaginable. But the story gets even darker when an actor's life is taken from them in a shocking act of violence. 11. Phil Hartman.
Want to mingle with the American people, talk with some real folks, maybe get a Diet Coke or something?
All right, fine. But please, don't tell Mrs. Clinton.
Jim, let me tell you something. There's going to be a whole bunch of things we don't tell Mrs. Clinton.
Phil Hartman was a comedy legend, often called the Glue because he made every project he was in better. He was a star on Saturday Night Live, famous for his hilarious impressions of people like Bill Clinton. After SNL, he starred in the brilliant sitcom News Radio, playing the vain and ridiculous news anchor Bill McNeil. He was also the voice of many beloved characters on The Simpsons, like the washed-up actor Troy McClure and the incompetent lawyer Lionel Hutz. He was a comedic genius, respected and admired by everyone he worked with. He had a wife and 2 young children, and he seemed to have a perfect life. But in May of 1998, a horrific tragedy unfolded. Phil Hartman's wife, who had her own struggles with substance dependency and anger, was in a dark place. In the middle of the night, in an act of unthinkable violence, she ended her husband's life while he slept in their bed. A few hours later, before the authorities could get to her, she took her own life as well. The news was absolutely devastating. A beloved comedic voice was silenced forever, and 2 young children were left without their parents in the most horrific way imaginable. It remains one of the most shocking and heartbreaking stories in Hollywood history. Losing a star so violently is a nightmare. But sometimes tragedy doesn't come from a person, but from a random, terrible accident on a lonely road. 12. Lamont Bentley.
God, I guess I just didn't want to believe you. How can Mrs. Henderson be such a hypocrite?
Mo, she's a politician.
Well, I think she should be exposed.
Yeah, well, she already did that.
For teenagers in the 90s, the sitcom Moesha was a huge deal. It starred the singer Brandy as a high school student navigating life in Los Angeles. One of the key characters was Moesha's friend, Hakeem Campbell, played by Lamont Bentley. Hakeem was the funny, food-loving neighbor who was always hanging out at the Mitchell house. He was a fan favorite, and over the course of the show, he grew from a comedic sidekick into Moesha's main love interest. Lamont Bentley had a natural charm and charisma that made him perfect for the role. After the show ended, he continued to act and was also pursuing a career in music. He was a young man with a bright future ahead of him. But in January of 2005, that future was cut tragically short. Lamont was driving by himself on a freeway in Southern California late at night. For reasons that are still not entirely clear, he lost control of his vehicle. The car went over an embankment, and he was ejected from the vehicle into the path of oncoming traffic. He passed away instantly from the injuries he sustained. He was only 31 years old and was the father of 2 young children. It was a sudden and devastating accident that took a talented young actor from the world far too soon. A tragic car accident is a sudden horror. But our next story involves an accident that was even more bizarre and unlikely, happening to a veteran actor in the middle of a city street. 13. Orson Bean.
Heard your mother. We're donating it to the church. Of course, we need to make sure it's in good working order before we do that.
Not without a helmet.
Orson Bean was a veteran of show business. His career spanned over 7 decades. He was a familiar face on game shows in the 60s and 70s, a popular comedian, and a talented actor who appeared in countless TV shows and movies. He was known for his wit, his charm, and his instantly recognizable voice. In his later years, he found a new generation of fans with recurring roles on popular shows like Desperate Housewives and How I Met Your Mother. At the age of 91, he was still active, still working, and still full of life. He was a true Hollywood survivor. In February of 2020, Orson was in Los Angeles, walking to a theater to see a play that his wife was starring in. As he was crossing the street, a car clipped him, causing him to fall to the ground. Then, in a horrific turn of events, a second driver who did not see him lying in the road struck him again. The injuries from the 2 impacts were too severe, and the legendary entertainer passed away at the scene. It was a shocking and tragic end to an incredibly long and successful life, a freak accident that silenced a beloved voice of stage and screen. Losing a star in their 90s is sad, but it's even more heartbreaking when a promising young actress is taken by illness at the very beginning of her career. 14. Michelle Thomas.
Stop, you're embarrassing me. Wait, say my name again. Stefan?
There is nothing sweeter than the sound of my name upon your lips.
Michelle Thomas was a bright and bubbly actress who lit up the screen every time she appeared. She was best known for two major sitcom roles in the 1990s. First, she played Justine, the girlfriend of Theo Huxtable on The Cosby Show. Later, she landed her most famous role as Myra Monkhouse on the hit show Family Matters. Myra was the smart, funny, and very persistent girlfriend of the show's nerdy main character, Steve Urkel. Michelle had a wonderful energy and a beautiful smile, and she quickly became a fan favorite. She was a talented young actress with a promising career ahead of her. But while her career was taking off, she was diagnosed with a very rare and aggressive form of cancer. She was determined to keep working and fighting. She underwent treatments and continued to act, keeping her health struggles very private. But the disease was relentless. In late 1998, her health took a turn for the worse. Surrounded by her family and friends, Michelle Thomas passed away at the shockingly young age of 30. Her loss was deeply felt by her co-stars and fans, who would always remember her as the vibrant young woman who brought so much life to the screen. Sometimes an actor's face is all we know of them, but in our next story, the actor was famous precisely because we almost never saw his face at all. 15. Earl Hindman.
What are you afraid of?
I do have one underlying fear, Tim. I'm afraid that reality as we know it is someone else's dream.
On the massively popular 90s sitcom Home Improvement, Tim Allen's character, Tim the Toolman Taylor, was always getting advice from his next-door neighbor, Wilson. We never saw Wilson's full face. He was always partially hidden behind the tall backyard fence, with only his eyes and a hat visible. It was one of the show's best-running gags. The man behind that fence was a veteran actor named Earl Hindman. He provided the calm, wise, and often philosophical voice of reason to Tim's chaotic life. Even though we never saw all of him, he was one of the most memorable and beloved characters on the show. Earl Hindman was a respected character actor with a long career in theater, film, and television long before he peered over that fence. He was a true working actor, not a flashy celebrity. He was a private person who enjoyed his work and his life away from the spotlight. In 2003, just a few years after Home Improvement ended its long and successful run, Earl Hindman was diagnosed with lung cancer. He fought the disease privately. Later that same year, he passed away from the illness at the age of 61. For millions of fans, the kind and wise neighbor had finally gone home. Losing a beloved character actor feels like losing a piece of TV history. Our next star played one of the most iconic troublemakers of early television, a character that would define his entire life. 16. Ken Osmond.
You know something? You guys have got a real goofy father.
You cut that out, Eddie. You really will be getting that across a puss.
And it won't be from your father either.
Wally, I'm worried about the beaver. If you grew up watching television in the 1950s and 60s, you know the classic sitcom, Leave It to Beaver. The show was about the perfect American family, the Cleavers. But what's a perfect family without a little bit of trouble? That trouble usually came in the form of Wally Cleaver's best friend, the sneaky, two-faced, and hilariously insincere Eddie Haskell, played perfectly by Ken Osmond. Eddie would be incredibly polite to the adults, saying things like, "That's a lovely dress you're wearing, Mrs. Cleaver." Then, the second they left the room, he'd be trying to talk Wally and the beaver into doing something they weren't supposed to. Ken Osmond played the part so well that it was hard for him to find other acting jobs. People saw him and could only think of Eddie Haskell. So he left acting and became a police officer with the Los Angeles Police Department for 18 years. He eventually returned to acting, often playing a grown-up version of his famous character. In his later years, he suffered from chronic respiratory issues. In 2020, Ken Osmond passed away from complications of his illness at the age of 76, leaving behind a legacy as one of television's most iconic and lovable bad boys. From one comedy legend to another, our next star was so famous for playing a bumbling sidekick that his name became a shorthand for nervous energy. 17. Don Knotts.
I have just one thing to say. This isn't gonna be kid stuff.
Barney.
Sheriff, if you don't mind.
Don Knotts was a master of comedy. He could get a huge laugh with just a bug-eyed expression or a quiver in his voice. He became a household name playing the nervous and comically incompetent Deputy Barney Fife on The Andy Griffith Show, a role that won him 5 Emmy Awards. After leaving that show, he became a movie star. Later in his career, he returned to sitcoms, playing the flashy and clueless landlord Ralph Furley on Three's Company. He was a comedy icon, a man who spent his entire life making people laugh. His characters were always a bundle of nerves, but in real life, he was a quiet, thoughtful, and very professional man. For years, Don Knotts was a heavy smoker, a habit that eventually caught up with him. In his later years, he developed lung cancer. Even while he was sick and undergoing treatment, he continued to work, lending his iconic voice to animated movies like Chicken Little. He fought his illness with quiet dignity, away from the public eye. In 2006, at the age of 81, the legendary comedian passed away from complications of his cancer. He left behind a legacy of laughter that has entertained generations of fans and will continue to do so for years to come. Losing a legend in their old age is sad, but expected. But a more tragic story is when a star outlives their own mind, fading away slowly in front of the world. 18. Estelle Getty.
It's always been your worst feature. Actually, your ears are your worst feature.
Picture it, Sicily, 1922. That phrase immediately brings to mind Sophia Petrillo, the feisty, sharp-tongued, and hilarious Sicilian mother on the legendary sitcom The Golden Girls. Sophia was played by the brilliant Estelle Getty. What many people don't know is that Estelle was actually younger than Bea Arthur, the actress who played her daughter Dorothy. It took hours of makeup to make her look like an 80-year-old woman. She was the breakout star of the show, winning an Emmy and the adoration of fans around the world for her perfect comedic timing and her ridiculous stories. She was a true television icon. Sadly, as the years went on after the show ended, Estelle Getty began to suffer from a terrible illness. She was diagnosed with dementia, a cruel disease that slowly robs a person of their memories and their personality. The woman who was famous for her sharp wit and her incredible memory for hilarious stories began to lose her own. Her health declined over many years, and she had to retreat from public life as her condition worsened. In 2008, just 3 days before her 85th birthday, Estelle Getty passed away from complications of her illness, a heartbreaking end for a woman who brought so much sharp-witted joy to the world. A slow decline is one kind of tragedy, but a stranger story is when an actor is believed to be gone for decades, even when he's still very much alive. 19. Abe Vigoda.
Hell, he can't do that. It screws up all my arrangements.
Well, that's what he said.
I can't go either, Sal.
Abe Vigoda was a character actor with one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood. He had a sad, hangdog expression and a slow, monotone way of speaking that made him perfect for certain roles. He became a star in the 1970s, playing the aging mobster Sal Tessio in The Godfather. Soon after, he landed his most famous role, Detective Phil Fish, on the hilarious police sitcom Barney Miller. Fish was old, tired, and constantly complaining about his various aches and pains. The character was so popular that he even got his own spin-off show. Abe Vigoda was a beloved and respected actor. But then, in 1982, a magazine mistakenly reported that he had passed away. It was a simple error, but it started one of the longest-running jokes in pop culture. For the next 30 years, people were constantly asking, "Is Abe Vigoda still alive?" It became a recurring bit on late-night talk shows. Abe had a great sense of humor about it all, often appearing on shows to prove that he was, in fact, still around. The joke finally came to a real and sad end in 2016 when Abe Vigoda passed away in his sleep at the age of 94. It was the end of an era for a wonderful actor who had the strange experience of outliving his own public demise by more than 3 decades. From the 70s to the 90s, these stars left their mark. Our final story is about another actor from a classic 70s show whose life was cut short by a sudden and unexpected health crisis. 20. Theodore Wilson.
Family pays its debts. Now you're gonna get your thou, but you won't get 1 cent of that crooked interest. You dig?
Good Times was a groundbreaking sitcom in the 1970s. It was one of the first shows to feature a black family, the Evanses, living in the housing projects of Chicago. The show was known for its mix of comedy and serious social commentary. Over its run, it had many memorable characters who would pop in and out of the Evans family's apartment. One of the most popular recurring characters was Sweet Daddy Williams, a flamboyant and funny neighborhood numbers runner. The man who brought that character to life was the talented actor Theodore Wilson. He also had a regular role on another hit show, That's My Mama. Theodore Wilson was a reliable and talented character actor who was a familiar face on television throughout the 70s and 80s. He had a great voice and a strong presence that made him stand out in every role he played. He was a constant presence in the world of sitcoms, a true working actor who was respected for his craft. Tragically, his steady career was cut short. In 1991, at the relatively young age of 47, Theodore Wilson suffered a massive stroke and passed away. It was a sudden and unexpected loss of a familiar face who had been a part of so many classic and beloved television shows.